and she's been coaching inventors for 5 of those years. And she's also Bay Area winner for the National Center for Women and Information Technology.
Has changed my complete trajectory of not only how I perceive myself as a game designer.
You talk a lot about discipline in your podcast, like a lot. Again, talk about feeling personally attacked on a daily basis.
Discipline has been said 95 times by myself of those 73 episodes. Oh, frustrating to see the reason people aren't successful is because they aren't willing to put in the time. People are half committing to their dreams. What the heck? If you can't convince yourself, how do you expect to convince anyone else?
Hi guys, my name is Emily Merritt, and me and Courtney are talking today about the most common questions that she gets asked by her students that are inventors and product developers or product designers. I feel like she doesn't need an introduction, but I'll go through the whole spiel. She's got 9 years of product licensing experience as an inventor and a product designer, and she's been coaching inventors for 5 of those years. She's taught hundreds of inventors how to license their products, and she's won various awards, including the Nexties Award in Entrepreneurship. And she's also won the Bay Area winner for the National Center for Women and Information Technology. She has licensed 6 products, 1 self-published board game, and has her own podcast for the past 3 years called the Serial Inventing Podcast that I absolutely love and listen to. She practices a unique method of coaching known as concomitant coaching, and it's a style that not only helps students achieve their goals, but also tackles the internal challenges that often arise along the way. By addressing these obstacles in real time, this approach ensures that the hurdles don't become the reason that the students fail short of success. And she is tough. She holds you to your goals, but she's also incredibly understanding and encouraging and like the biggest cheerleader that you could ever have in your circle. And so without any further ado, Courtney, take it away.
Wow, that was incredible, Emily. Thank you so much for that great intro, and I'm so stoked to be able to be here with you. And yeah, I can't wait to dive into some important topics, so thank you.
Well, and thank you for entrusting me with talking with you about these topics. I'd love to start by asking you, what is one thing that people don't know about you that plays a big role in your journey as an inventor, entrepreneur, game designer, Wonder Woman of the world?
That's great. That's a very good question. I would say being homeschooled was a big part of my journey, my professional journey as an inventor. I did go to a charter school called Pacific Coast Charter School growing up. We tried a lot of different schools, my brother and I, and we found out that homeschooling made the most sense for both of us, except for high school. I did go to a public school for high school. I'm very, very passionate about homeschooling because it taught me to love learning. And that is something that I carry with me through every single thing that I do, hobby, job, family, you name it. And so through that, my love of learning, it's helped me drive my passion. And that's another thing that I wanted to bring up. I grew up with parents and a family who loved me. And through that, they would take anything that I was passionate about and encouraged it. Obviously, that would be great if we were all able to grow up that way. And I understand that that's, unfortunately not always the case. But that did play a really big role in my inventing journey. And I will also say that when I was young, we got to choose what topics that we focused around our learning. So whether it's math or English or science, we would encapsulate something that we are interested in to help us understand the actual topic. So my brother was really interested in roller coasters, and he still is to this day. And because of that, when he did math and science and whatnot, my parents would revolve it around roller coasters and building them. And so through learning and through our education, we were able to connect things we were passionate about at that point with learning, and we could retain and understand the material better. And for, my brother, it was roller coasters. For me, it was entrepreneurship. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. Obviously, I originally started with the traditional lemonade stand, and from that, I would circle everything around coming up with businesses. And because of that, I still have a love for business and entrepreneurship and inventing. And I feel like a lot of people are not aware that I was homeschooled, and I am so glad that I was, because everything drives from my passion of learning, and I can solve so many problems with that curiosity.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. Did your parents homeschool you, or were you part of like a homeschool program?
Good question. So it was a charter school, so I did go to school 2 or 3 times a week for very particular classes. I remember doing a pottery class, and I did do an algebra class.
That makes
But
sense.
my parents did homeschool me most of the time, so most of the classwork was done at home with my mom primarily. But I did go to classes every so often, depending on the subject and the expert person that we wanted to be able to teach whatever that was.
That's really cool. I honestly, I wouldn't say I wish I was homeschooled, but I always said like I'm not a kid person, but if I was going to have a kid, I would have them participate in some sort of homeschool program just for the reasons that you're talking about. Like you get to like you make it relevant to it's not just the cookie cutter like book reading that you get in typical schooling situations, not to put those down, but like it's not for everybody. Um
It's not.
so, and you can say whatever you want about socially homes like socializing and homeschooling and things like that, but there's ways around that. So anyway, it's just really fascinating. And I think that's like super cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, with homeschooling, it's interesting because you are able to, again, like focus on your passions and have it be hyper individualized to each person. And yeah, I'm so glad that I was able to do that. And then I can use my findings, my curiosity, my research that I'm constantly doing on so many different topics to help whatever I'm passionate about, whether it be, jobs or hobbies.
Now, this is a side note, but I hope you're going to tell me that your brother is a roller coaster tycoon.
He is in the amusement park industry.
No way. I was kind of joking.
He is. He has worked for Disney Imagineering. He's worked for Universal Studios, Adirondack Studios. He's worked for a lighting company in the entertainment industry. And he would love to one day get deeper and deeper into roller coaster design and get more in there. So we both ended up with the passions that we also originally started with in schooling, which is kind of cool.
That is crazy. Oh man, now it makes me wish I was homeschooled and was able to do like what would I have done? I don't know. I probably would have been a weirdo. I've been into some weird stuff when I was younger. All right, what has inspired you most in your career so far, would you say?
I would say that being inspired by those around me who are successful. I believe that when you have a good support group, you basically have to rise to their level, and they can help you too with that. There is a community for everything. And if you think there isn't one, then you're not looking in the right places. Community is everything. It is so, so important who you surround yourself with. And not only having a community, but being helpful in your community and consistently giving back, preferably first, before you end up asking questions. Better to be helpful to get recognition for your helpfulness, if you will, to support the community immediately. And then when you need help, advice, then you can go ahead and ask your questions, and other people will have an opportunity to be able to give back. To me, when you're surrounded by an incredible community of people who are always doing The same thing, like a podcasting community. That's all they're doing. They're doing podcasting. I want to be a part of that community because I'm podcasting. When you're in that niche group of people who are all going through the same trajectory as you, and they're doing actively, it makes you want to create a larger dream. At least that's, how I feel. To shoot higher. Because at least how I look at it is what you think is impossible shifts to something much higher than you perceived before. My podcast slogan is Make It Happen, because doers, people doing, are what makes them successful. It's movement. Whether it's forward movement or even backwards movement, any kind of movement gets you there.
Well, I'll say two things. One, I feel personally attacked because right now I am going through a situation where I feel like I'm not entirely, like me being in the entrepreneurial pursuit. I feel like at least lately I haven't been surrounding myself with people who are pursuing similar things or like think similarly. So I haven't been like challenging myself in that regard. And I do feel unfortunate, which is why we had just talked about before going to this recording that I was considering potentially moving or at least giving a trial run in another location where I do have a friend who's surrounding herself with people who are like basically in the sports world, it's playing up. So this was going to be point number 2 is in the sports world. I'm sure that in your multiple sports endeavors that you've heard of this term, but it's playing up. So like if you're playing an opponent that is apparently more skilled or more awarded than you are, or like in my case, I used to play lacrosse and field hockey. And our field hockey team was actually pretty good, but my lacrosse team was not so good. But it was crazy that when you would play against a team who was like ranked higher and like had won more than you, that you would actually play better than if you played against a team who was more closely ranked to you. And this was the same as like being on a team. Like I played like travel lacrosse and stuff. And I played with girls who were on paper much better than me. And when I was around them, I played phenomenal. But then when I would go back to my high school team and play with those girls, like I sucked. So, or like I would play a lot. Like I would be like, where was that person? Like, why is she not here? So anyway, that kind of like when you were talking it about that point, it really reminded me of like, yeah, you play up when you surround yourself with a community or a group that is also playing at a higher level and brings you up and challenges you. So
I love that because it's really like almost an energy field. You end up, as they say, like you're surrounded by, whoever you're with. Of the 5 people you're most connected with is, who you make up of those, 5 people. And so it makes complete sense that if you're working with a level of lack of action or of a lot of doing, then you gotta rise to that level and get that, become a part of that powerhouse. That does make a lot of sense. And I feel like a lot of people really don't put in the right amount of emphasis or enough emphasis on community. I definitely did not before. And it wasn't until recently, maybe about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I joined a lot of Facebook groups for game design. I joined maybe 20 or 30 of them on, again, Facebook groups, and how active they are of game designers. And that's all it is, mind you. It's like 70,000 game designers, board game designers in one Facebook group. And they're posting like 20 to 30 posts just in that one group every single day. And so to be surrounded by that consistently, and to be able to go to my Facebook and see that my feed is filled with my passion, then it becomes my workplace. Then it becomes a place of creativity and inspiration. And to be able to have that community and to riff off of that and to comment and help others and to get help when I need it has changed my complete trajectory of not only how I perceive myself as a game designer, but feeling more bold when I don't know where to go. I know I've got, 20 to 30 game design groups that I can tap into at any point.
I love that. I also love to hear that people are still using Facebook. I joke, but I guess I've been so caught up in the LinkedIn world that doing like my business stuff and well, even in like the licensing realm, that I've the only time I ever go on Facebook is when my Instagram photos automatically get posted on Facebook and then someone comments and I'm like, oh man, I gotta go over there.
Yep.
Or Facebook Marketplace. I will say Facebook Marketplace is where it's at.
Pretty good.
Anyway, you talk a lot about discipline in your podcast, like a lot. Again, talk about feeling personally attacked on a daily basis. Love it. Thank you for coaching me, even when I'm not talking to you. But what would you say is the importance of discipline in regard to achieving long-term goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's great that you asked that about the particular word discipline, because it was just a couple days ago, I think, that I looked for the word consistency, or just consistently, any derivation of that word. And I looked at the word discipline and counted how many times I used those words. And I think...
Wait, in your podcast?
In my podcast, of every single episode. Of
no way. That's actually pretty neat. Also, very nerdy. Very nerdy. On brand.
Well,
Lovingly on brand.
Very on brand. Yeah, and so I found that the word consistent has over 70 words of the word consistent in the podcast, and discipline has been said 95 times by myself of those 73 episodes. And it made me realize how important and how much I drill that word home of discipline. And what that means, and how many different perspectives and slants that there are to just the whole ecosystem of discipline, how to get it, why you don't have it, etc. It made me realize how important it is to what I teach about the soft skills of inventing and honestly anything and everything that we do. And not only is it important, but it is the key. It's never about the content of that thing that you are learning that is the hardest to find. It's the lack of soft skills you have that stunts your own success. The problem with discipline is people mistake the features of motivation to be the features of discipline. Motivation constantly fleets. When it's not there, you cave into doing other things and change your priorities. Motivation, to me, it's like the wind. It's constantly changing. It's super unreliable. It's just waving back and forth all the time. And how can you be successful at something if it hinges on the very thing that is unreliable? Think about that. But discipline is a rock. It doesn't waver. It demands your time. And if you give it your time, you will have a high ROI, return on investment. Why? Because spending time working smart is what you need to succeed at anything. And people don't want to put in time. With my students at InventRight, it is so frustrating to see the reason people aren't successful is because they aren't willing to put in the time. People are half committing to their dreams. What the heck? If you can't convince yourself, how do you expect to convince anyone else? The formula for success, in my mind, is simple. You do something you are passionate about. If you did it for hours and hours on end, for the rest of your life, you would be happy. You are willing to put in the work, and you put in the work. You do that, and you'll have the money you're looking for, and you will be happy. The lack of commitment people have is wild. It's a crisis. Consistency is why you will be successful. Your time is your most valuable resource. And having discipline is the first thing you need to get to that next step. Without it, what do you have if you aren't executing consistently?
It reminds me of the quote. I think, well, a lot of people say it, but Alex Hormozy is somebody that you and I both follow
Yes.
on social media. And for anybody who's listening who doesn't know who he is, you need to know who he is like immediately. He and his wife Layla are insanely impressive entrepreneurs. I'm honestly like, I wish I was like, just transport me into one of their bodies. I don't care. I'll be a jack dude too. I don't care. But I think like this was literally like a week or two ago, he posted something on, I think it was Instagram, and it said, what would your life, something to the effect of, what would your life look like if you consistently did the thing you didn't feel like doing? But it helped, hinting though that it was like the thing that you wanted to do to achieve your goals, but you just don't feel like doing it. And that's where you were saying like the motivation is fleeting and stuff. Like, and I think about that on it again, feeling personally attacked. I think about that a lot because it's like I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, and in my head I'll go, I don't feel like doing this right now. And then like the Alex Hermosi and the Courtneys of the world are on my shoulder being like, no one cares. like you're only hurting yourself. Uh, like you're the one that's losing here. Like if you're just sitting there, like if you have this goal and you set this goal and you're not willing to be consistent or have the discipline and you're just like, I don't feel like doing it. Well, okay, nobody feels like doing something that sucks. No one like I'm in a point in my business right now where I'm a little bored with the thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then I had a person come in and like kind of see it from the outside who's also an entrepreneur, and I was like getting ready to delegate stuff, and he's like, dude, your system's a mess. Like you need to get in there, clean it up, and still do more of the thing that you're trying to delegate. Cause like you can't delegate right now because you're just like kind of like you're wasting a lot of time and things that aren't necessary. And I was like, yeah, but I've been doing this. And he's like, well, you're going to have to do it more because it's like a little broken right now. And, that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes when you look at what you're doing and you're trying to be hard, you're working hard in the wrong direction, or you're finding ways to be distracted by stuff that you think might be important, but really it's just preventing you from having the discipline, having that consistency. Yep. And like doing the boring thing over and over, putting the reps in, just like you're working out. So anyway, that's my,
100%.
that's my thought. That's my thoughts on that.
That's great. It's very true. I mean, unfortunately, discipline is seeing what you need to accomplish, understanding that there might be pushback in your head, and looking at it and doing it anyways. And that's the difference between discipline and motivation. Motivation, you look at it and you turn the other direction with that feeling of, I don't want to do it, and you cave into it. Discipline is, you still feel that. It's not like there isn't going to be pushback when you're disciplined. That pushback is going to be there. The difference is you look at it and you do it. You run towards it compared to, you know what, I'm going to get to it tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, and it never gets done. Not saying discipline's easy, but the first part of that is really understanding brain-wise the difference in what you're relying on and why it's not working. Once you know the difference between motivation and discipline, and know that that feeling is not going to go away, that you don't want to, but accepting that feeling to be there and continuing to move forward towards the thing that you don't want to do in that moment that you have scheduled for, that is where success happens.
So I'm going to chime in here because of course I have this battle too, and I'm sure everybody has this battle. So, but Courtney, what happens if like I really am just like the word burnout, which I kind of am not a fan of that word, or what happens if I just like really need a break? You know, like what happens if I am like I want to listen to that voice that is trying to distract me from having that grit and consistency? Like what then? Like what do you
Yeah.
say when you're like, I really think I need a break?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a an unfortunately difficult thing to answer, because there's so many different reasons why that could be the case. And with my students, I will have probably a good hour and a half conversation talking about that feeling. And the biggest thing that I'll do is figure out why. Why are you feeling that burnout? What is the reason? And is it burnout? Is it disguised as something else? Have you actually lost passion for what you're doing and you'd rather do something else? Do you feel that burnout because something you're doing is not working and you just feel tired of feeling like that and therefore that's manifesting as burnout? It's okay to walk away from projects or put them on hold and come back another time. It's dangerous because when you pause it, sometimes that pause can be indefinite, which is the danger of pausing anything in general. Not necessarily that it is a bad thing if it does become indefinite. Sometimes things do need to be indefinite, and that's okay. But usually there's an underlying reason why we feel that way. And unless you can completely emotionally separate from the thing that you're doing and you know rationally that you just need to do it again and again and again and again and again and again and again, then you can do it no problem. You'll have it separated from your identity and how you view yourself. And you can do it like pitching with myself. I can pitch no problem, accept the rejections, and have a completely unemotional focus on it. Now, that took me 8 years. I got there, but it took me 8 years to detach emotionally from me being targeted to my product being targeted. And so, if you can get into that state, that's going to help a lot. But again, I'd say to answer that, it really depends on what is going on. If you're feeling that, first you got to recognize exactly what is happening, and don't just stop at the I feel burnout. I don't want to do this anymore. Like dig deeper. Why?
Yeah,
What's the reason? And is it really burnout? Maybe it's
right.
not. Maybe it's something completely different.
I tend to find like, at least for me personally, I'm starting to see like about three different silos of like situations that of how I deal with something when I reach that point. The first is like I love this one when my body says like, well, you're tired, you should go to bed. Like that's because I kind of work, you and I are both on the night owl side of things. Although I've been changing that a little recently, but I find like sometimes I'm just like, I'm tired, but I'm not tired. Well, okay. So then I usually will say, okay, let me try to do one more thing. And then I usually end up sitting there for like way longer than I thought. And then I get the thing done, or I end up sitting longer and doing more. So that's like one silo of thing. And I've noticed my body do that where it's like, you don't want to pay attention right now. It's like, okay, well, let's just do one more thing. And then boom, I'm like, 2 hours later, then I've gotten work done. Silo number two is I'm feeling a lot of resistance towards getting something done. And I'm like, why is this? And then for whatever reason, I delay it. And then it turns out like a couple weeks later that there was actually like a pivot about to come. So I don't know if that's like the universe being like, yeah, don't waste your time on that thing. It's about to change in a second, or in this case, like a couple hours. So that seems to have been one of my like outcomes. And then outcome three is I give myself a timeline. I'm like, all right, I'm like real frustrated. I need to take a step back for whatever reason. Like I need to regain my composure. So I give myself a timeline. It's like, okay, well, then tomorrow, though, at 8 a.m. or whenever I get started, then like that's it. We're gonna like, get back on the field and we're gonna play the game. So like you can have your little temper tantrum right now. You can throw your little fit, go do it, go meditate, go work out, go for a run, go read a book, like pet your dogs, snuggle somebody you love, like do the thing you gotta do, but then like get back on the horse first thing in the morning. So,
And I've definitely done that many times too, where you don't push back your emotions, but you allow yourself a timeline of, okay, you feel this way. You don't have to push that down, and it also doesn't need to last weeks. You can allow
yeah.
yourself that time of, I'll give myself 10 minutes, 3 hours, the rest of the day. And then you have to have that hard deadline of, feel free to express yourself until that time, but when that time happens, you need to flip that switch. And I agree, Emily, that is so powerful to be able to do, especially when you have that deadline. Because, as you know, without that deadline, it just becomes this pity party of your life. And
Yeah.
you become the situation, and you have to have that deadline.
Well, and that's I've been there. Like, I feel like you probably I don't know. I don't know. I feel like you're just such a superwoman. I don't know if you've ever felt any sort of like I don't think you've ever cried. I'm joking. I know. And she seems like an absolute goddess. But I like I've been there where and this was when I was in my mid 20s, but I was like super depressed. And like it would just I would get down on one thing and it would last like days and weeks. And it's just like yeah, like if you don't give yourself and I get it when you're in that state and like, and nothing is like if you're in a truly depressed state, please go get some help. However that is, however you need that. But like for real. And like is something that I used, but it's just uh there's a difference now. And when when you have a goal, when you have action steps towards that goal, yeah, you can't let yourself just like ruminate forever because then you never achieve anything. And then you're going to be on your deathbed looking back and like just saying, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like, shoulda, coulda, woulda now. Like, do it now. Like,
Yep.
do it. So I've noticed that your podcast mostly talks about the industry of product licensing, where you can pitch product concepts to companies and then get passive income from it, which is how we met in the first place, which I'm so thankful that we did. And the one thing that I've noticed, though, and this is in your coaching style, in the conversations that you have, but also in the episodes that you release on this podcast, is that you're talking mainly about soft skills. So, like we were just talking about, consistency, discipline, perseverance, grit, being tenacious, developing relationships, like, all of basically like personal and interpersonal skills. So, why is that? Why do you think that those things warrant such attention, particularly in the product licensing space?
Yeah. I created the podcast initially completely out of necessity. And, shall I say, a lot of frustration on my part because of my students. Which is why I like to talk about this in the focus of it being a crisis, because it feels like a crisis. I'm coaching such a large variety of students, from high income, low income, international students, ages from, I think the youngest would be 8, all
What?
the way up to 86, is my current.
Whoa. 8?
It's all over the place. Yeah, we've got a youth program over there.
I love those parents for those. I love that for them.
No kidding. It's incredible to see them flourish through it and learn those soft skills at such a young age.
Yeah.
I have found that even with 86, and everything in between, everyone is lacking these soft skills. You'd think maybe, when you're 50, you automatically get these soft skills.
Dude, that wouldn't that be nice? I can't wait for that upgrade. I cannot wait for that software, that iOS update.
And honestly, that was shocking to me. I was surprised to see that the longer that I coached, the more that I found that it was not just a problem that I saw in a set of students with a set demographic, and again, like set age, everything, but it is a problem in 98% of my students that I have ever had, whether it's that I'm coaching them or I've just met them in person. it's wild. It's absolutely crazy. And through that, it instilled my own passion of wanting to do something about that. And I dug more. I spent some time writing down actually the problems that my students were having, rather the obstacles, the reasons why they are not successful at product licensing. I did more research and I wrote some material on it. It ended up becoming this podcast. And it's really for my students, the podcast. But it became much larger than that, both to me and to other people that I found out that have no connection to inventing or even entrepreneurship. Through coaching hundreds of students who are learning how to license their products, I realized that the two reasons why people don't get their products licensed is because, one, they are not consistently putting in the time to pitch their products. And two, they aren't following up with companies every week. Now, I will say, following up is a hard skill, as in not it's a hard skill, but it is a hard skill. It's tangible. It's a tangible skill that someone can learn. Hard skills are much easier to learn because they're external. It's usually knowledge that you're taking in to be able to gain that hard skill. I can teach that no problem. Hard skills, no problem. And that's what we do at InventRight. We teach you how to license your product idea through our proven track record of 10 steps. However, that's not the reason why people are not successful and licensing their products. Because they lack consistency is a big part of it. And I spent a lot of time doing more research, and I went deeper and deeper and asked my students, why aren't you consistent? You have the steps. You know what you need to do. Be consistent. Pitch 1 hour a week, 3 hours a week, like 10 minutes a day. Like, it can't be that hard, right? Like, you just spend the time doing it. And once I got past the array of excuses my students would give over months and months, I found a few core things that they lacked in soft skills. And I started to focus a lot of my content around those. I think I have maybe 1 or 2 episodes at the very beginning that talked about hard skills, what you need to be successful in product licensing. And then the rest of the 70 plus episodes are all completely focused on soft skills, because that's where it seems to be the problem. And slowly, more and more, it became all of this content revolving around the lack of soft skills that people have internally to continue, whether they, are getting so much rejection and they're struggling with that because they have 9-to-5 jobs and they don't have time, because of their family responsibilities, because of their health, because they're tired of feeling potential backwards movement depending on what companies are saying about their product. It's very, very easy to get discouraged. The problem is people go off course and they try things that is not recommended, that they might think is recommended, because unfortunately common sense is relevant, but also unfortunately there's a lot of things in product licensing that don't take what we think makes sense. And so that makes it difficult, because we have strategies that work, and then sometimes those are common sense, and other times they're the opposite of common sense. So it's really difficult to figure out what to do without a coach or someone, helping you through it. And because a lot of students feel desperate and they're searching for that shortcut that we all hope exists and doesn't, and they start ignoring the coach's advice, and then soon when that doesn't work, they lack motivation. And because they're relying on that, they stop trying to achieve their dream. They're tired. And it's so painful to see this happen again and again, like day after day, coaching these students, which is why I created the podcast to focus on these situations so I can stop my students from making these situations happen. They're going to hit those obstacles strong, and they can actually move forward and accomplish their dreams, make something of them, and make some passive income for themselves and their family. But soft skills are just not talked about in the focus of product licensing And so I wanted to fill that need for my students.
Well, that's really noble of you. Also, really cool from like so I come from a scientific researching background. And so the fact that you've kind of dug and asked why, and you keep finding these patterns is very interesting. Also, I feel like I would be a fraud if I didn't admit that I was one of your students that basically put stuff on pause. Uh, my reason was I did the thing that you recommend not doing, where I quit my job to try to license and get an invention into the world full time. And, you know, it doesn't always work out the way that you hope it does. But it is like, particularly with product licensing, it's not like an immediate gratification. So it's not like that hit that you get when you open up your social media and you have like 200 likes on your LinkedIn post immediate, 30 minutes after posting it, sort of thing. It does take a lot of that grit and tenacity to keep basically waking up every single day and doing the quote unquote boring thing over and over and over again to achieve your goal. I actually didn't mind the boring over and over again thing. It was more like I just did the dumb thing where I quit my job thinking I could make the. I mean, to be fair, I was doing freelance work on the side at the time, but that also wasn't, we're all out here just grinding, trying our best. But at the end of the day, I do see the value in it, and it is a proven system that can work. You just have to be willing to, get your 100 no's.
Right.
But it takes time, and it does take a lot of perseverance and effort. But you can do it, and it's essentially glorified copying and pasting. So, I mean, I joke, but it kind of is. I mean, you do have to have some thought into it. But the cool thing that I liked about, so not only are you learning those or hopefully flexing and exercising your soft skills, but then you're also learning the harder skills, which is you are doing. I mean, when I was working with you, I feel like sales was a
Yeah.
huge thing, and like psychology, getting into like the mindset of the people that you're trying to reach out to. Um, there's a little bit of graphic design skill that goes into it, and a little bit of like copywriting finesse and things like that. So, um, it is really interesting that a lot like said 98% of your students and the people that you work with have those issues, and I hate to be like part of that statistic in some fashion, but at least we've maintained a French. What?
We were never taught it. We were never taught these skills, so it makes sense that people like you. And it's not common sense. So you'd think that, oh, so I'm gonna hit my head against this brick wall 500 times, and I'm gonna enjoy doing it, and that's the way to success. Like that's like it sounds like an absolute no. It sounds painful. It sounds laborious. But with listen to any of the well-known business people out there, including Alex Hormozy, and consistency is how you succeed, but it does go against our brain chemistry and how we feel about it. And I think that's where a lot of the disconnect is until we rewire our brain and really think about the importance of discipline and consistency and having grit. And what does that mean when you get rejection? We're not trained to this. We don't learn this. Like, it's just something that is often opposite of common sense, which makes a lot of sense why people are not successful in businesses in general. It feels wrong until you start changing your perspective.
Yeah. Well, and again, going back to Alex Hormozy, I feel like we talk to him all the time, or talk about him a lot. He says that something to the effect of like, everybody's going to wonder how you did it. And then but they don't want to do what it takes to do it.
Yep.
Because all they see is you getting the licensing deal in the email that's sent out to all of the Eventbrite students. Or all they hear is like someone posting about like, oh, we did really great. But what they don't hear is, or what they don't see is all of the grit and all of the time it took to get there. And, you might get lucky early on. Hopefully you do. but that's not necessarily going to happen.
It's true. And I think it's really important to start putting more focus in those who are successful in the world in general to bring that iceberg up a little bit more. You know, you're kind of talking about that iceberg analogy where all you see is that capstone. And that's it. You don't see anything below the water, and it's just impressive. They just one day woke up brilliant, one day woke up successful. And when you think about it, of course, that doesn't make sense, but that's not how you're thinking in the moment of how envious you are of their success until people start talking about their stories. That it took 2 years for me and 81 rejections of laborious pain and pitching to get my first 4 products licensed. They just see I got 4 products licensed. That's incredible. But they don't see all of that pain and work that was needed for me to stay consistent and be successful. And I think it would be important if when we talk about stories of people's success, that we start bringing that iceberg all the way to the top of the water so we can normalize what the actual story is like for those who are successful.
Yeah, I think that would be, well, one, I can just only imagine like a giant iceberg out of water. That just seems absolutely massive. But two, I think something else to think about is like once you've done it once, how much quicker will it happen again? You know, more likely than not, it's going to be way quicker. You know, something that you learned to do that took you 3 hours, 3 weeks, 3 years. Now you do it again. I've done that so many times where you do it the first time and you're like, ooh, that sucked. And then that took way long. And then the next time you do it, it takes you like 30 minutes. And I'm not obviously licensing the cycle, the success cycle is a little bit more drawn out. But, you know, hopefully since you did it that first time, you got your sea legs, you put in your reps. Now the next time you go back, it's going to be to say easy. I mean, it's not hard, but the hard part is the mental game and the soft skills game. But you know, hopefully you'll have more determination, grit, power, all that confidence, all that jazz, and it'll just, you know, compound on itself over time. And I'm sure you've seen that, you know, with like learning how to do all your game design stuff that you've kind of newly adopted into your life. I'm sure it's getting easier. Well, maybe not. It doesn't seem like it right now, but I'm sure it'll get easier and easier the more you do it.
Definitely, and it has already for sure. I found playtesting initially to be very, very daunting. To go to a physical event and to have someone test your game and to mention all the things of why it sucked. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone home in complete despair of forget game design, forget this game, I never want to go back to it again, because I took it personally. And isn't it fascinating that in pitching, I have no problem with emotionally separating it. And with game design, it took me, now I was able to bounce back quicker than, 8 years it took to emotionally separate. It took me maybe a year to bounce back and emotionally separate. And so it closed in, which is great, but it still was really, really brutal to experience that. And as long as you know that it's a journey and it takes time to remember your coaching, remember your soft skills, then it's less painful. In fact, it's not painful now, because you can rely on those that you've learned, and it just makes it so much easier, and it makes it actually fun.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I was afraid you were going to say something to the effect of like, you know how people always say like, "Oh, I'm a great I love cleaning houses, but my house is a mess." You know, like I'm great at cleaning other people's houses, but forget about mine, you know, like here you are, the great Coach Courtney, teaching everybody else how to do their thing. And then you're like, screw game design. I don't like this. Because one bad play test. No,
Definitely not.
well, yeah, right. I would hope you would say that. And I know you enough to know that would, but it is interesting that like, you know, the first time something happens, it takes you years. And the second time you're like, all right, look, give me my moment. Let me have my moment and then we'll come back. So that's really cool. So talking about pitching and persistence and coaching and being successful and all that, how has persistence shaped your career, particularly in challenging moments? we've kind of been talking about this, but I'd be just curious specifically on your thoughts on persistence and your career as a whole.
Yeah. What I find interesting about staying persistent is, at least for me, it was very hard to believe that it works until I saw it work. Before that, hearing the word persistent and being persistent, it feels, at least to me, it feels very hollow. When I initially started pitching my products, I would send an email here and there to companies and never get replies. I'm sure a lot of my students who have pitched for the very first time and are continuing to pitch can definitely relate to that. Then, when I had my coach that I was talking to hear my frustrations with that, back then in 2016 when I was learning how to product license, she asked if I had been doing follow-ups. And I was under the assumption that if they don't reply back from your first message, they aren't interested. You sent out your energy into the universe and they're not reciprocating it, well, then they just must not be interested. Pretty common sense to me. You give it back, they don't give it back to you, that's it. However, she told me that follow-ups are how you get replies. And you should assume that if you are sending one message to a company that you will not get a reply. You might get a reply on the first follow-up, but more than likely you will not. And it's the consistent follow-ups and the different ways to try to get into a company and not give up until you have gotten in is where success is. Now we say the fortune is in the follow-up, because that is exactly the case. The fortune is in the follow-up. And since that conversation, I started to do follow-ups consistently. I didn't stop, but I did listen, and I was persistent. And because of that, people started responding. It got me my very first licensing deal with 4 products signed in it because I persisted. Now, like we were talking about with the iceberg analogy, what you see on the outside is I got 4 products signed. But what people don't see is the 2 years it took, the 81 rejections of them being not interested in my product. And if I hadn't persisted, I wouldn't have got them licensed at all, especially if I didn't do follow-ups. It would have been, well, everyone thinks my product sucks because no one's responded, which I hear all the time, and it's crazy for anyone to say that because my students are saying that, and my initial question is, oh, so you got the sell sheet sent in, and they said no. And their response is, no, I haven't even had a chance to send the sell sheet because they haven't responded. Which is then when I can say, okay, so that means it's not that they don't like your product.
They don't know about it.
They haven't seen your product.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But we say so many things like that in our head. And that's a big problem. Again, rewiring our brain chemistry. And if I didn't listen to my coach and take action on her advice, I honestly probably wouldn't be in this industry of product licensing at all. And if I didn't keep going through all of those rejections, those 81 rejections with 82 being my first deal, I wouldn't have understood that rejections are a great way to build relationships and get future deals. And that is an incredible way to, again, to develop those relationships, move forward, and just because they say no doesn't mean that they're not interested in anything else that you have to offer that company in the future.
Well, and I hear a lot. So again, going back to my business, which is actually in a weird way kind of a spin-off, like just so the listeners know, I help B2B companies do LinkedIn outbound campaigns to try to get more leads and sales for their business. And it actually is kind of a spin-off of the skills that you taught me during my time at InventRight. And the one thing I hear a lot of what people say is, oh, well, I don't want to annoy somebody. So they try not to follow up because they don't want to annoy. And it's not so much what do you call it? Like the lost inventor in the woods.
Yep.
Like you're just
That's
trying
right.
to find the right place to go. You're just like confused. You don't play confused, but it's like it's true. Like if you're reaching out to a company for the first time and you don't know who to talk to, you are kind of like lost and you're like, "Hey, just help point me in the right direction. I'll get out of your hair. I promise. I'm not trying to harass you." But when you come into it with an energy of like, "Listen, I'm trying to help. I've got this thing. I think you might like it. You wanna see? And like a lot of people are like, oh well, I don't want to annoy them. And it's like, yeah, well, people are busy. Um Sometimes you go to spam. There's sometimes they don't check their LinkedIn a lot, or they don't check their email a lot, which is unfathomable for some of us to think in the day and age when we're on our computers all the time or on our phones all the time. But it's also sometimes a generational thing too. Like if you're reaching out to somebody who is like not to be ageist here, but who's like a boomer, they might not check their email or their social media as much. But if you were to call them or to like reach out to them in a little bit more of an old school way, like sometimes trade shows are really popular places to meet people and shake their hand. Sometimes it's a generational thing, whereas us younger folk like email like please don't meet me in person. That is seems or don't call me. I won't answer if I don't know your phone number. But like I'm much more likely to be checking my email and checking my social media. So sometimes it's just like one, it doesn't hurt to be like, heaven forbid someone thinks a stranger thinks you're annoying. Like, okay, oh, it's not the end of the world.
No.
And at the end of the day, like you are trying, hopefully especially if you're getting a licensing deal, it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for you. It's a win for them. So, to go into it, I do hear that a lot where people are like, I don't want to be annoying, or I don't want to bother somebody. And it's like, well, you can have the best product in the world, and if nobody knows about it, your product can be life changing.
Yep.
And unless you have the money and the time to venture it and bring it to market yourself, then sometimes your only option is to license. And in that case, then you just have to have the perseverance, and you have to just not be afraid to get the no's and to not be afraid to put yourself out there. Because otherwise, no one's going to know about you. And wouldn't that be, I mean, that's a shame. I mean, it does bother me that I've kind of paused my licensing ventures, licensing goals, because like I do think that my product would use, like I honestly, it's something you said to me when you were coaching me a long time ago, and I'm going a little off topic here, but something you said to me that like it does echo in my head is like something to the effect of like putting smiles on people's faces is priceless. Like that is incredibly valuable. Or having something that helps somebody is incredibly valuable. You can't put a price on that. No matter how dumb the idea is, if it puts a smile on somebody's face and it causes people to bond, or it causes someone to feel safer or more fun or more childlike, or more use, like they have more utility, it makes their life easier, like that, it is a shame if you don't get it out there. So anyway, that is something, yeah, I don't know if you know that, but that is something that like echoes in my head a lot. It's like you can't put like putting a smile on someone's face is priceless. That is the value. So
I so appreciate you saying that. And I remember that conversation that we had. And honestly, I have a lot of students who struggle with the idea that their product that they're working on is not big enough. It doesn't have enough of an opportunity to have the most amount of impact. And yes, there may be something in particular, a certain area that you want to have impact in. And if that's the case, then of course you can, hone in your efforts in that particular area. However, like I said with you during coaching, that to me, if you can create a product that allows someone to be happier, even for a moment, people are going through crazy things in their lives. It seems like we're always in unprecedented times in all sorts of different areas. And if that's
yeah,
going to be the case, and there's so much sorrow and pain going on, and you develop a product that makes someone have positive endorphins go through their body, even for a second, what better purpose is there in my mind? I mean, that is so powerful, but it's a perspective shift, and you have
Yeah.
to shift that perspective, because if you don't, to me, that's going to be the reason why you are not successful with the product.
Well, and it also doesn't help, like, if you are kind of in that space, that mind space where you're like, my product doesn't have enough impact or whatever. And mine's not changing, mine doesn't change the world enough, that kind of mindset. And then of course, if you're getting ghosted by companies that you're reaching out to, or they're saying, no, that doesn't fit our product line, or something like that, then yeah, like those thoughts are gonna creep in. But here we go back to this whole soft skills thing where if you have a coach like Courtney yelling in your face, being like, "You're putting a smile on people's faces." She did not say it like that, everybody. I'm doing it for dramatic effect. She was very nice about it, and it made me cry. Um, but if you don't have, like, you have to be your own kind of advocate in that sense, where you're like, no, smiles are important, no matter any idea. It's given to you by it's you're channeling creativity, you're channeling God, source, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It is a gift in a way, and it would be a shame for you to just, you have this goal, you want to achieve it, and it would be a shame for you to kind of let this doubt and this fear, or this, like, I don't want to bother people, whatever, like this lack of persistence to creep in to affect that. And maybe it is just a time thing. Maybe you just have to put in enough reps over a long enough period of time. And maybe it is that, like, you start out doing it all the time, like every single day, and then you do lose a little bit of steam. All right, well, then so what? So then you do it like once a week, you're still doing it.
Yep.
So this is getting me fired up. Now I need to create more time in my calendar to bring my idea, resurrect my idea. It's never died, and I actually just refiled the provisional patent application for it yesterday, uh, just to keep kicking that can down the road. But anyway, so you don't give up, people. Don't do what I did. Keep going. I didn't give up. I did not give up. So talking about getting rejected constantly and it wearing on people and giving them kind of, in a way, an out, although a week out, you might argue, an out to quit. It can be pretty daunting and demoralizing if you're getting all of these no's, or getting ghosted and you're trying your hardest. How do you break down those larger projects and tasks so these obstacles don't stunt you and you can keep moving forward and you can keep persevering and not just, give up because woe is me, and you're having a little pity party for yourself?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. A lot of people are, of course, familiar with Atomic Habits. I personally really love the way Tiny Habits goes about it. I have also had a habit coach for over a year with a good friend now, Tim Gillett. He's awesome and really helped me work through habits and how to form them. And there is a science to that. Like there seems to be a science to everything, a technique. And what this taught me was to look at the next 1, 2, 3 steps in micro, bite-sized pieces that you can take immediate action on. Which, by the way, for listeners of my podcast, I have what are called quick bites. And that is purposefully things that you can do under 5 minutes or less right then to move a project forward. And that's where this came from, of the science of tiny habits. You want to make sure each thing that you're doing is very, very small so you actually end up doing it. So taking immediate action on it every day or every week to keep you consistent in a small, manageable way. Now, in my opinion, everyone has a few minutes every day to spare, a few minutes every day. looking at my projects I have now and clearly defining what the next step is and the smallest action that I can do to take, that will help me take it because it's clearly defined, is taking a very, very small amount of my time, and it's very easy for me to do it because I know where I am in the progress of my product. And it doesn't, these skills are not, product licensing specific. These are lifestyle skills. In fact, I just finished recently a certificate for intellectual property, and it was a class, a course, if you will, and it was like 10 hours of videos that I had to watch. I had to take a rigorous test, and then if I passed it, then I get this certificate, and it's even accredited and all that. Great, great course. Absolutely loved it. But I didn't have 10 hours. And I thought, how the heck am I going to take this course? It's 10 hours. Like, I just don't have the time. And that's what reminded me that, just like my podcast says on one of the episodes, instead of saying, I don't have time, say, it's not a priority.
Or I don't want to make the time right now.
Exactly.
Which is legit.
It is. And
then don't do it. Don't spend the money on it,
Totally. And honestly, through that, it made me decide, well, then, is it a priority, Courtney, or is it not? Because I have to make a very clear commitment and delineation between either I'm doing it now and I'm committing, or I'm not doing it at all and I'm choosing to not put it on, my agenda in any way, shape, or form, or maybe revisit it another time. And I thought, this is important. I do want to accomplish this. And so what I did is every Sunday, as I would kind of prepare for the week ahead, look at my calendar, make sure everything's good to go before Monday, I would then click on one of the videos on the course and I would watch it. Luckily, each one was between a 2 to 5 minute video. And there's, as many videos as it needs to get up to the 10 hours. So there's lots and lots of videos and sections on it because they're micro videos. But what I would do is I'd watch one video. And I say, okay, Courtney, and sometimes 5 minutes felt too long. So I thought, okay, I'm going to watch it until my attention span drops and I'm going to pause it. And then next Sunday, I'm going to pick it up in the middle of the video. Almost always did I watch the 5 minute video, and usually 2 or 3 more videos after that, because it's the start that stops most people. And I needed to start. And so once I started, no problem. Could totally go through it. And I went over the entire course in, I don't know, it was like a year. It took me for 10 hours to go through the entire course. And I did it. I have it. I'm so stoked I did it. But it's just because it's laborious and something's long, as long as you choose for it to be a priority and you're okay with the length of time it might take, because I'm only using 3-4 minutes a week or 15 minutes if I keep going, the time magically appeared. Apparently I did have 15 minutes to go through stuff, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It happened. And it took me a year, but I was comfortable with that timeline because I felt like, based on my priorities, that is the time I felt like I could give, and I accomplished it. And I think that the more we focus on how we're going to accomplish it and clearly define how that's happening and being okay with what that outcome would be, such as it took me a year, then that's how things are going to get done.
Yeah. Well, and it's definitely you got to have that patience. And I think people want to, I always jokingly say this is, I want it and I want it now. But, if you wanting it and it taking a year is also cool. And something that struck out to me, that when you said 10 hours, I don't have that. Yeah. Who the hell has 10 hours? If you look at it in one giant chunk of time and you're like, oh, I got to get that done. Who here can clear up an entire 10 hours out of a day or out of a week to bang? Realistically, could you? Sure. Have we, for stuff that we've had to cram or whatever? Sure. But something that is you kind of do it, take at your own pace sort of thing. Yeah. thinking about doing that's not something that needs immediate, like it's not an immediate fire that you need to put out or something that needs your absolute priority. Yeah, 10 hours seems like insane. But as you said, breaking it down into smaller steps, just, and okay, so I do this too. Like, I get like, I don't have time for emails or messages or something responding. All right, so you spend a couple extra minutes on the toilet, not to get too like graphic here, or maybe listen to it, and maybe it's not the most peaceful thing, but like listen to it when you're showering, when you're like driving someplace, or like just do it in little pockets, just like optimize those pockets of time. Or,
There's
heaven
so many
forbid you
pockets
don't,
too.
what?
There's so many pockets too. It's amazing. When you start looking at your time, there's so many pockets. It's amazing, but we just think, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
busy. I don't have time. There's no pockets." And once you lay out your whole week and you look at how many pockets there really are, you've got lots of time.
Yeah, you can, especially if you've got those like small bite videos or little bites that you, or like just sending a message, sending one message at a, you go downstairs, you send a message, you go upstairs, you send a message, you like, you're on your way to your car, you send a message instead of, and like heaven forbid you don't text your friend like once, and instead of texting your friend, you send an email. Or heaven forbid you don't watch Survivor on Wednesdays. You know what I mean? If I hope maybe people still watch that. I know my aunt does, and she's roped me in a little bit. But like, heaven forbid you don't do one thing that you can like kind of give up. So, uh, yeah, there's definitely, if it's your goal in life, and it helps you grow, and it helps you strive for that ultimate thing that you're trying to accomplish, so that at the end of your life you're not like, man, I could have done better. Then it's worth that. And the crazy thing is, once you start getting in the habit of doing it more, it becomes easier. Now, one could argue, like, oh, all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. All right, fine. But, there's a time and a place for that. And the way I see it is, especially if it's during like my typical work day, like no holds barred, man. Like just bang it out, get it done. There's nothing wrong with shutting off at the end of the day, but if it's in that time and you've got some pockets, like you have to go to the bathroom at some point during your work day. Go send a text instead of staring at the wall, or go send an email instead of staring at the wall. So I don't know. I find that really interesting. And I guess talking about, so we're talking about micro tasks, but then what about managing multiple projects at the same time? Does that carry the same kind of advice? I would assume not, but I would really like to hear your insight on just multiple projects, not just like tiny multiple tasks of a one project.
Yeah, I would say yes and no to that. Yes, doing things in small bites, it can be very helpful for this. But what matters more is how and what you prioritize. I do something with my students called the OOO, the Order of Operations. And you are putting your projects in order, number wise, with number one being the oldest or your most passionate project or your most lucrative, in whatever way you want to decide that. And try really hard to not reorder them when you are stuck on one. It's purposely structured like that, so you're only doing the tasks top down, and you cannot work on your tasks for project number 2 in your OOO until you have done the task for project number 1, because hopefully it is structured of the most important to least, and if you continue working on the ones that are easier to do, or number 2 and number 3 that are not as important, then your number 1 never gets finished. And that's a problem. You want to do it in order of importance. Very important to do, because then you start favoring other projects because of the task that they're on, and you never go back to your most important project because you're stuck. That means you need to move forward and keep going and trying to figure out why you're stuck with that number 1 and continuing to do that until you've accomplished it. Then you can go ahead and do number 2 and number 3. To me, I look at it as if you have the opportunity to work on multiple projects, then it's a privilege. You are able to work on them because you are successfully able to, time and time again, finish that number one small task. Then you can go to number two and number three. If you don't finish your task in number one, you don't get to do number two and number three. You don't get that privilege because the most important thing that you need to get done is not done. Then there's no reason to work on the the not as important things for two and three. So as long as you keep that structure and go down the line, then you'll always make sure that you are accomplishing the things that matter most to you.
So what I'm hearing is you're rewarding yourself for getting tasks for project number one done by moving on to project number two and three. You're giving yourself a reward with more work. No, I'm kidding. No, that's an interesting, like, kind of a waterfall sort of perspective. So talking about project management, task management, all that stuff, are there any tools or methods that you use to stay organized? I'm sure you have many. I know a lot of the times it just comes down to preference and honestly, sometimes behavioral. You got to manage and watch your behavior and how you have specific like little cheats and tricks that you can do to kind of trick yourself into getting work done. But I'm just curious if there's anything that you use specifically for when you're pitching and going through these different tasks.
Yeah, lots of them. But if I had to boil it down into a couple, I would say first would be my digital calendar. And making sure what really matters to accomplish is on my calendar. Even things that have arbitrary dates, I will assign to a day, not a task. I use Google Calendar, so I make sure to not use tasks because if you don't finish them, they just continue moving on to the next day and the next day. And I'm purposefully using deadlines on my calendar to make sure I accomplish certain parts of my projects. So I look at that every single day in the morning, make sure I'm hitting those very small landmarks of movement. And for example, let's just say if I want to pitch to some companies for a few hours, I will place it on my calendar in a time slot, such as like Wednesday from 9 p.m. to midnight. There's a block there that says pitching, and it hits those times. And then I am using the reminders that go along with that event that go to my phone. Automatically, it does 30 minutes in advance and 10 minutes in advance, and I do use those to remind me, hey, remember at 9 p.m. you said you were going to do this thing, and now it's on here, and hey, it's coming up. Make sure you're in the right mindset. You're ready to go. But I will also say having alarms on your phone as well, irrelevant of the notifications, can really help too, especially when you're caught in things. Unfortunately, with notifications, it can be just a sound or a vibration, and it can be very easy to ignore those.
Yeah, I feel like they just I get them too, and I don't even hear them.
Yeah, they kind of dissipate. They don't really, yeah.
But the alarm, ooh, I hear the alarm. Especially if it's the same kind of alarm that I use to wake me up in the morning. It's just like Pavlov's dog. I'm just like, okay, I'm up. What?
That's great. And alarms are really, really powerful. Like they're one of my most recommended tools that I recommend them all of the time to my students. But I get a lot of pushback, which is really interesting. And
what do you mean?
Something that I'm looking into more and more. People don't want to set the alarms on their phones.
Like alarms telling them when to stop, or alarms telling them when to start, or both?
Both, but the focus is on starting. So, for example, hey student, just set up an alarm on the day you mentioned when you're going to start, which was Thursday at 9 a.m. Set an alarm for that to remind you, hey, it's 9 a.m. And the amount of pushback that I get is fascinating to a point where I am now spending my time doing research into what is happening psychologically.
Yeah, like what is it like they don't want, is it like is it maybe like something to the effect of like it's like their mom yelling at them telling them what to do or something?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think it's coming from more of a, honestly, as I'm going through the research, I think it's more of a ego standpoint that's happening.
Oh, like
Very,
I don't need no alarm to tell me when to do. Well,
correct.
it's like obviously you do. You didn't get it done.
And there's a disconnect, and that's a problem. Um, and
All
something
right. Well,
again
in
that I
that
think is
case, then
important.
you just have to, and I feel that too. Like sometimes you get some advice and it's probably good. And for whatever reason you feel resistance, I would argue that that's the exact moment that you have to do the thing. Like just do it. Just do it.
Well said.
You can always be like, you know what, I didn't like that, or that actually didn't really help, or I heard the alarm and I just snoozed it, like, but you gotta, if you're feeling a lot, I mean, I would argue, if you're feeling a lot of resistance to something, then that is the thing you gotta do.
Agreed. And it's important to lean into that. And I've heard that as business advice as well. And now I'm talking to my students saying, just try it. Just try it for one day. Just you can come back and say it didn't work, hated it, like great, we tried it, didn't work. Let's go to the next tool. But I have found that at least for myself, alarms very very important for me, especially because time is something we can't get back. We can get back money, we cannot get back time. And since time, in my mind, is everyone's most valuable asset, making sure that I use it strategically is of utmost importance to me. So, scheduling things in my calendar, putting alarms on my phone separately, as well as the notifications that I get, is very important for tasks that I need to have accomplished. And it helps me stay accountable on that.
Well, it's also free. I mean, you can't argue with freemium.
True.
Free 99 is my favorite.
Yep,
It's my favorite
absolutely.
kind of price.
And that's actually another tool that I would give. And I don't know if I would call this a tool really, but it is spending your time learning how to ignore and eliminate two separate things: distractions. I am constantly doing a mental cleaning of responsibilities and looking at my own priorities. Our brain constantly tries to put other things in front of our goals, our dreams, and that means we need to remind it many, many times what matters. The more you do it, the more it will change your brain chemistry towards what you actually want. And writing down lists for me has been a big help of all of the projects, all of the jobs, all of the things that I'm doing that I have priority in my life, and organizing them based on priority and removing any that are not relevant to me anymore, or I'm placing them in what's called an Eisenhower matrix,
Mm.
which can help you remove unnecessary distractions or help you ignore things that were a much larger priority in your head that really shouldn't be.
Should we? I mean, I think people should definitely Google Eisenhower matrix. And I actually have it on my desk in the other room so I could recite it, but it's four boxes. And the one is, what is it? Like important, must be done by you. Unimportant, can be done at another time. Or important, but can be done later. And then important, but can be. I'm butchering it. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And unfortunately, there are different ones of it, and
Mm.
different flavors. But important and urgent are the ones that are up at the top, and then unimportant and though unurgent, but usually that bottom right quadrant is talking about delegating. So if
Yes.
something's unimportant and non-urgent, then the answer is to delegate it. And you're basically putting all your priorities, all your projects, everything that you're doing, if you will, that require tasks that continue. You place all of these in these boxes, and then you're focusing on the ones that are the most urgent and most important. And then from that, hopefully, you'll be able to delegate a bunch of things in that bottom right quadrant. And without doing that, I feel like there's a lot of weight on myself of my priorities and my projects. And utilizing that matrix can help. But I would also say, even just making a long list of all my projects and priorities and putting them in order and just seeing what's at the bottom is fascinating. And once I orient them in the right way and see what's on the bottom, often I will go ahead and circle or put a line through the difference between what really matters and what's just less important. And I'll also cross off ones that are at the bottom of, wow, I really don't want to do that anymore. And amazingly, they often dissipate and go away. And the cross off actually ends up lowering the priorities list, which is a great way to go about it.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, like, there's a lot of times, like, I'm actually in that phase right now with my business where I'm like, all right, do I really need to do this? And it is crazy, like, once you actually sit down and kind of do a time audit or a task audit and really assess, like, where you're at. Sometimes stuff just and that's the other thing that's crazy too. You get in the habit of doing stuff. And like you're just like in the grind and you're not really like after a while you're just kind of like sometimes you get on autopilot. And I think it really is a nice thing to just take a moment every once in a while and just see like, all right, do I really need to be like doing all of this, or can some of this or deprioritized or move. So anyway, it's just really, or sometimes you get in the habit of doing things in the wrong direction, like you're prioritizing kind of the wrong things. So doing a time audit, I think, is a really important aspect. And it doesn't have to you don't have to do one every single day, but like maybe once a month or every so often, just check in and be like, yo, is this actually necessary? Yes. Okay. Move it up, move it down, keep it the same. So that's really fascinating. Are there any other tools?
Yeah. One other that I'll mention, and it's a chart that the quote, there's a quote on it that's by Dan Coe. He's a writer, entrepreneur, incredible book that he put out called The Art of Focus. Amazing book. And the quote is, if you're lost, the answer is education. If you're educated, the answer is execution. If you're executing, the answer is persistence. And if you're persisting, the answer is experimentation. And I love this quote because it helps exactly where I am in this pyramid, basically, and what I need to do next with all of my projects. I have found personally that most of my students are stuck at if you're executing, the answer is persistence, because they learn how to do it. They have the knowledge, they have the hard skills, and they are slowly pitching, they are executing, but they are not continually doing it consistently and persisting. And until then, can I move them to that next part of, if you're persisting, then experimentation. And personally, because I have so many students who are in the executing, then answer is persistence area, this is where I personally spend most of my own research and learning in, because it is the biggest problem that I see people having.
Interesting. And that's a really, really cool quote. And I'm sure that Alex Hermosi probably has that quote written somewhere in his like brain, because that sounds like something he would say. So I love that. So you mentioned earlier that developing professional connections, or as you said, relationships, is really important. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, totally. I found that companies want to partner with an inventor as the person, not a product.
Makes
so
sense.
What that means is they make deals with people. Inventors focus so much on the product and the rejection. Many people don't even reply back to companies saying thank you and continuing to develop the relationship. Once they get the no, that's it. Oh, well, hey, Courtney, I got 3 no's this week. Moving on. Feel good. Great. What did they say? Was there any feedback? Were they kind about it? And also, what did you say back? Oh, well, I didn't say anything because they said no. Like, what else am I going to say? Like, they said no. Like, that's
potential missed opportunity right there.
Yes. So much of a missed opportunity. Not even a thank you to them. And yes, it is polite to say that and to to say thank you so much for taking a look at my product concept. I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to, up your level of not responding and at least say that, that's great. But you're still missing, like you said, so much of a missed opportunity. And if you just continue the relationship from there and move forward and basically change your relationship from less of a sales or selling kind of focus, and really more of a professional relationship that you're building, at that point, once you step further away from that pitching mentality and they said they're passing on the product, then you can start developing that relationship more through being able to ask for feedback, to better help your product development, or to be able to ask for a wish list, see if there's a particular area that you could help with product development in, or if they know of more companies that would be a better fit for your product. You never know if you're ever going to come back to that company. You probably will. There's a good chance that if you are a serial inventor, if you've got lots of different products, or future products, you're going to come back to them. And you want to develop that relationship because people make deals with people. People don't make deals with products. And that's really important to develop that relationship and remember that you really kind of start that relationship once they say your product is passed. And as soon as you change that mentality, that's going to help you then start building that relationship for the long term.
Well, and that was one of my favorite things too about pitching was especially if they're willing to have a conversation with you. Sometimes you reach out to people and either they don't respond or they're just like, nah. And then you try to follow up with them and then they ghost you even more, which fine. But the ones that are actually willing to be like, yo, I do like your idea. It's just not exact fit. Here's why. If you change this, if you adjusted that, or if you've got any other, that was like some of my favorite conversations, like, oh well, we're not looking for, I guess this would have been a good fit a year ago, but we're not quite going in that direction anymore. Here's what we are looking for. That's cool. And then you see, like, hopefully they give you a list of products that they're looking for, or they give you something that sparks an idea. You never know, it could end up being a better idea than the one, not to give up on the one that you had, but it could end up being another whole product that you can then add to your arsenal. So that was definitely one of my favorite aspects of it. And hopefully it doesn't end at no, if they're at least willing to have more of a conversation with you.
100%. And it really does help you change your perspective on what you're doing is not selling, your relationship building.
Right.
And you're working on your, shall I say, Rolodex, your database.
You even know what that is? No. You're a little too young for that. No, I'm joking. I think I saw one once. My grandmother had one. But it's crazy to think that people had a roll of business cards or contacts, little index cards. Now that's what our phone is for. What our social media connections are for. That's our Rolodex. So I have noticed kind of the same thing going to entrepreneurship and sales. It used to be 100 years ago, it used to be that people wanted to be part of Coca-Cola. They wanted to feel cool, so they got Coca-Cola and they connected with brands. I think Nike was kind of sort of that kind of brand too. But you see more and more now, even those bigger brands, but smaller companies switching to this more of a social selling aspect where you have, they always say that people don't want to buy from brands anymore and companies, they want to buy from people. So that's why you have a lot of quote unquote social media influencers or the face of a brand that is really coming forward. And they're the ones that are talking about the service or the product, or they're talking about their personal life. And it is more of that. So there is this, it's seemingly this natural trend towards humans just wanting to connect more with humans in order for there to be win-win situations all around and in order for commerce to progress forward. So I really think that that's fascinating. It's not only in the product licensing realm, but it's also just in business and in sales in general. And so, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Everyone's doing it. Just do more of it. And on that note too, and kind of going back to the tools in the arsenal and relationship building, and this is a little, we hadn't really discussed this particular aspect, but I am curious, do you see any sort of benefit of like somebody posting about their product licensing journey or their product development journey, maybe even their item if they're comfortable doing that? Because I know that there's some people like that are worried about intellectual property and things like that. But do you see any benefit of like, say, showing up on social media and talking about product licensing in an effort to foster more of those relationships that you're trying to build to get your product license?
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, any way that you can curate a strong community around you, relatability, your story, mostly on LinkedIn, is going to be powerful. But I would say that that would come more into developing your own support system and having a strong community around that and cheering you on, rather than developing stronger relationships with employees who work at companies.
Mm.
I've seen a couple of inventors who have absolutely posted and continued to post about their journey, and the support and the following they now have is incredible. It's amazing how willing these inventors are to talk about their story, the ups and the downs of trying to find a company who's interested in product licensing. We really don't recommend showcasing your product in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Uh, on social media, any public disclosure, even if you have a granted patent, it can get a little bit weird, as well, showcasing something that maybe someone can work around.
Right.
So it would be fine to do that technically. But seeing the journey and having that story pushed out more, and seeing it more and more, I've seen more, like you mentioned, like it's a trend. More and more relatability is coming into it. That iceberg does seem to be going up, and to see that is, it definitely takes a level of vulnerability to be able to
Oh
do
yeah.
that.
I mean, you have to be willing to like just let people see you get beat up. But
Correct.
I think people like that. I mean,
They do, because we're all getting beat up.
that seems to be, I mean, some of the posts that I've posted on online, it's like the ones where I'm like, it's like the personal ones. And I'm like, guys, I don't want you to be, I don't really, and I'm not, I don't want you to care about this, like care about my business stuff that I'm posting about. But it is interesting that it's almost like, people love the drums, like people love the tea, but I think it is, I don't know, it again, it's leaning towards this whole relationship building, and people want to buy from people, not from products, or not from a brand or a logo or something like, or a company that doesn't really have a personality or a face. It really is fascinating. And I guess, as long as people aren't posting about their product specifically for intellectual property reasons, uh like just for the safety of their own individual ideas, it probably doesn't hurt to like be posting more and like have it like, oh man, how cool would it be if you like develop this whole big following of people who are like supporting your journey, and then you don't know who's ever looking at your profile, and it could be somebody at a company who's like, I really like this person, I really like what they're putting out, and oh wow, they have a product that happens to just fit in our product. Like you never know where stuff is going to fall. So anyway, that was something that popped into my mind. I was like, do you see any sort of correlation there? And I know that you have quite a bit of a following on LinkedIn, so I'm sure it doesn't hurt. And I know that like LinkedIn's probably, I don't know, I love LinkedIn and I feel like I'm just absorbed in LinkedIn all the time. So, but I think some people, I would be curious to see how like it would translate on, say TikTok, although that's kind of a tumultuous, we're in 2025, right? In the spring of 2025 right now. And so that's kind of like an interesting battle. And then also like Instagram and, Facebook is been around. Um, so anyway, it's just fascinating, kind of like the landscape, how it's evolved over the past years or past decades, really, century. So you do a lot, Courtney. We you do. I don't. It baffles my mind all the things that you do, but it's also really inspiring because you're not only talking the talk, you're walking the walk. And so that's what I really love about you, is because you're out there doing it alongside the people that you're coaching, and also showing people that like it is possible, like You're in a way, you're like the social media influencer of our own personal lives, where you're doing the thing and you're being relatable, building those relationships. But I recently saw, and we mentioned it earlier, that you've started down the game making path, which is really interesting, and that you started your own chapter underneath the Golden Gate Game Makers called the Game Designers of Santa Cruz, because you're out in California. So you hold playtesting board game meetings every month. Whoa. How do you do it? Well, one, like, can you just tell us a little bit more about that experience? Because that must be really cool. But then also, like, how do you balance starting a whole chapter and then, but also pitching and coaching and working and then doing all of the things, living, existing, eating, sleeping, if you do those.
Yeah, yeah. So I recently started it, the Game Designers of Santa Cruz, back in December.
Wow.
I love it. It's an incredible opportunity to meet local game designers in my area, which there's I'd say about 10 of, which is awesome to have just within our small community in Santa Cruz. And the Golden Gate Game Makers has 18 different playtesting events every month, all the way around the Bay Area. And
Wow.
almost all of those are different chapters. So about 18 chapters, 18 events. Mine is at a local coffee shop that I've got a great relationship with, and they have chose to open up the coffee shop from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. when they would normally be completely closed,
Oh, fun.
completely for free, and it's free to
Really?
come in. And you just go ahead, and if you want to support the coffee shop, please support it with food and drink.
I was gonna say, I certainly hope that people, it's like one of those things where you go to a coffee shop, you got to buy the coffee at least once an hour in order to justify you sitting there doing work.
It is encouraged for sure.
That's great.
And we do have our own unique menu of like fun, different like game inspired food and drinks to
No way.
want to buy.
Wow, that's legit.
Which is it's awesome. It's a really fun experience. A big part of why I wanted to create this particular event, one, is because there isn't any events in my area. The closest is San Jose, which is about 45 minutes from me. And so I wanted to create one that was more of a far South Bay playtesting event, because right now there's no resources for game designers in this area. And so to be able to branch out to my local area was great, but also to be able to put more focus on actually the players than the game designers, because it's easy to support game designers, no problem. The problem in the game design industry right now is we don't have enough players. We need to enlarge the scope of the industry of tabletop games, board games, card games, you name it. And so to encourage people to come in and say, hey, have you ever met a board game designer before? Would you want to play some never ever before seen games before and help make them become a reality? I just changed the marketing copy a little bit to encourage people to come. And because of that, I've now built out a robust community of between 25 to 30 people coming to every event because they want to
Wow.
support local game designers. So it's been incredible. It's been really fulfilling, and I've got some fun things planned coming up for the next coming months as we go through, as well as we do a raffle of anywhere between 5 to 10-ish games that we raffle out just for participants being there, and that also encourages people to come because everyone likes winning a game.
Well, anyone likes winning anything. I mean, again, back to freemium. Like, oh, shit, I might not even play the game, but I want to win it.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. That's really awesome. And it reminds me a lot of those like board game cafes that are popping up. Only yours is kind of like the pre-board game, like the makings of getting into a board game cafe. Yours is like the preamble to that.
100%. Yeah.
It's like that's really, really cool.
Yeah, to answer your question about time, I do get that question a lot from my students at Eventbrite of where are you spending your time? How are you finding the time to do all these different projects? They see me post on a LinkedIn and they're like, oh, you did this new thing. Great. Oh, you got that certificate. Again, tiny bite-sized pieces over a year. Oh, you started a chapter. Where are you finding this time? Like pulling it out of thin air? What's going on? And at the end of the day, like I wish there was like a secret formula that I've uncovered in this treasure chest that I'm using. And there isn't. The answer that I give is priorities. It's all about priorities. I prioritize the things that are important to me to make succinct action on those things consistently. And it's very, very simple to do. We talked about priorities and how I do that priorities list. It's just hard to get there overall and to continually read through those priorities. I do it 4 times a year. Every quarter, I go through those priorities, write down all my projects, reorient them, get rid of some, make sure that they are in line with what I'm thinking in my head, what I want. And I think, honestly, that is really the answer for why I'm able to do so many things, is because there is no space between what I want to do and what my priorities are. And to piggyback that up, I have systems in place to be able to act on all of these projects consistently. And because of that, I have the time because all of these things that I really want to do are obviously at the top of my priorities list. So what I want to do, I make time for and then I execute it.
So what I'm hearing here is that all of us need a Courtney certified calendar, 12-month calendar that has all of the necessary time blocks plus these quarterly uh, project audits, and then probably some other tactics sprinkled in. So I can't wait for you to come out. I know that you come out with a calendar for inventing. So we have a new one that's actually more of a digital calendar that because I just want to like upload your calendar into my calendar and I just want to have those time blocks ready and I'd be like, all right, well, Courtney told me I gotta this Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. I gotta sit down and audit my thing. So anyway, thanks for giving us that, Courtney. I appreciate you. Okay. So I feel like without people having those types of systems in place, obviously you can get overwhelmed, stuck, fearful, quit. And from what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like you just kind of have to do it and create those new neural pathways and those new habits and then just do it and do it and do it until it becomes the norm. And then you get used to it and you just, you're in that execution on repeat phase. But what advice would you give to somebody who maybe isn't quite there yet or is trying to reorganize their life, but they are feeling overwhelmed or they are feeling stuck?
Yeah, and this does go back to one of our earlier points about figuring out where it's coming from and why you feel that way. Like really digging into, is it burnout? Is it really burnout? Like continuing to figure out what that actual obstacle is that you're trying to remove and keep moving forward, finding a way to solve that. Why do you feel overwhelmed? Looking at that chart by Dan Coe, that quote is a great way to figure out where you are in that scale. It is featured in my featured section of my LinkedIn profile, and so you can easily go to that and check out and remember what that quote is. And then with that, if you look at that, you'll be able to figure out what you need to do next of where you are on that pyramid of progress. And maybe you're doing too many things. Maybe your priorities aren't aligned with where you want them, which is why I revisit it every single quarter. Maybe you are truly experiencing burnout. To me, the first step is always knowing. And to be able to know, first you need to identify. Once you have done that, and only once you have done that, and you have identified it and labeled it, then can you start researching more.
But it's just like, if you just get clear on what you're doing with your life. Like I had to do that actually last weekend. I was feeling kind of just, I guess, overwhelmed with all the different things that I had going on. And I just had to like take a weekend and just be like, okay, what's the real goal here? What's the real goal? And then I like kind of thought like, okay, well, I could do this with that goal. It's like, no, you can't do that because then that would conflict with this thing that you really want and this other thing that you really want. Okay, so then we got to go back to okay, so that is the thing now. So then what if we went this way? No, that conflicts with this. Okay, we're going back to the thing now. So it just I kept kind of like almost like exploring like, okay, but what if I did this? And it's like, nope, that doesn't align. Okay, well, what about this? Not quite. Nope, it doesn't really align. And so ultimately, it just came down to nope, this is the thing you said you were going to do. Just do it. It sucks right now. Just do it. And sometimes it is, or and like, and I hate to say that. I know that this is not what this podcast is about necessarily, but sometimes like, yeah, okay, if it's causing you a lot of stress and pain and stuff, quitting is an option too.
It is.
Quitting is an option too, or like you said, putting it on pause, and hopefully like what I had to do with my product, it's like putting it on pause. I very much intend to come back to it, but sometimes you just have to do that. And I think about it a lot, and I have also a lot of people in my life who are like, oh, is the slap straw a thing yet? And I'm like, oh, please. It will be. I'm working on it's I'm moving in that direction. But and then sometimes you just like, and I have this moment too where it's like, how much longer are you gonna look in the mirror and tolerate your own crap? If you were dating you, would you be annoyed by the level of like conversation that you're having in your head, or would you be would you be okay with it and comfortable with it? Would you hug it and say everything's gonna be okay? Like what like are you tired of the stories you're telling? Like, are you starting to get tired of the stories you're telling yourself, or is it something that you're willing to just forget about and move on from, or is it something that you just need to like get clarity and then move forward? Because I feel like a lot of people, they feel stuck or they feel overwhelmed just because they don't have a certain clarity or a direction that they maybe lost sight, or they're doing too much and not prioritizing the things that need prioritizing. So, and then we have touched upon this. But how do you, and we've kind of skirted around this, but we haven't addressed this specifically. How do you recover emotionally and get back on track after a tough period from your perspective? Because I just obviously talked about my perspective.
Yeah, this question definitely hits home to me because I did once have a project that I was really, really passionate about in 2022. And I had a company interested in this product that I had invented. And I worked for months and months with this company on the idea. In fact, there were several of them that we focused on with different variations for a product line, so it became something bigger. I once had a product I was super passionate about I think it was 2022, and I had a product concept I had created, and a company was interested in it. And I worked for months and months with this company on the idea, and it became into this full-blown, beautiful product line with varieties in it, different variations of it. And we finally got to the contract, and it was brutal. It was a brutal experience. The company and myself were on complete opposite sides. I was just fighting for the bare minimum of rights, if you will, that an inventor should have in like a standard or far less than standard contract. It was so beyond emotionally draining. Very, very difficult for me to go through it day in and day out, back and forth for weeks of negotiations. It really took me months to recover from that experience. And eventually, though it was signed, after more and more work that I did with the product and the company, they ended up canceling the licensing deal. Mm. So much time I had put into it, so much love I had put into it, and it did not move forward. And the whole period of my life during that time was such a whirlwind of frustration. And as time went on, it did get better. It didn't bother me nearly as much. We did end in good terms, and I did make sure to have that happen and to focus on the relationship that I had built with them. And honestly, to answer your question, I would say, as that serenity prayer goes, keeping in mind what you can control and what you can't, as well as that you are proud of how you did handle it. That if you went back, would you handle it the same way when you had that same exact information? And if you can say yes, that is, as what I would have done back then it, and that's true for the situation in me. It has continually, as I remember those things, provided me peace in the way that I handled that situation. And if I knew it was the best that I could do, then I'm okay with whatever outcome that was and continue to improve on future situations. And it is also a roller coaster. Like, I went through so many emotions up and down, just insane. Like, I never thought this type of situation at the level that it was at would ever happen. And it opened my eyes to that. And yes, I talk a lot about the emotional roller coaster of it. I even have a comic on this emotional roller coaster that you're going on. And with that said, I honestly I recognize that it is an emotional roller coaster, and we all, as product licensors, and honestly anyone in business, should be aware that it is a roller coaster. You should be holding on to this. Hopefully, you have a restraint as well, over shoulder restraint.
Just like imagine like an inventor flying out of the car of like a roller coaster.
Not good. No.
Hopefully, the most that happens is your hat flies off. Okay, or your nice designer sunglasses.
And honestly, like, you have that up and down as well. Like, it is a pendulum. It does swing both ways. When you're at the bottom and the top, know that it is a peak or a valley. And it's important to ride that wave, not to fight it, to go with the flow. And as I said, 8 years it took to be able to separate myself from that emotional turmoil of like a back and forth, like roller coaster, in general, irrelevant from this particular situation. And maybe that situation kind of, officially made it so I could be done with this whole like pull back and forth. Because I do recognize that, if you are in it, then you're feeling that wave crash back and forth. And it did used to bother me a lot that we are constantly being emotionally like stoked and then sad and stoked and then sad, and it's a pull. But one day I separated myself from it, and I got over it, and I looked at it at a very, very rational standpoint. And really, I understood that all of the rejection and the emotional back and forth is because I was looking at it more as who I am and not what the journey is with my product. And that is not a reflection of me, but the industry or the product or the people that I'm working with. And that has helped me separate, and it doesn't bother me anymore to get those rejections because of that.
Well, and I think that like lends to the importance of just putting the reps in and
Yeah.
just kind of having almost it's in like not to make it sound morbid or anything, but it's kind of like repetitive stress inducement, so much so that eventually you just kind of become used to it. Like, you're putting those reps in, you're getting stronger, you're getting more confident, and then just exposing yourself to those situations on a repeat. Hopefully you get to that point where you're on a repeated basis. And then, you have your kind of like you get kicked down, and then, you get back up quicker and stronger every time. Because I know that like they do that in like military training with like recruits and stuff like that. Like they
Yeah.
just kind of put them in repetitively in situations that are stressful, so that hopefully when they're actually in a stressful situation, they can respond very, very level headed and calm. So is like inventing like military training in a way, or product licensing and military training. I'm I have no disrespect at all to that. It is, I'm sure, nothing like it other than from maybe a potential psychological component. But
Honestly, I think it's just business in general. And honestly, it's probably beyond that. It's
true,
probably just anything that we're doing that we're fighting
right?
for. You just need that training.
That was very eloquently said. Yeah, that's just like anything, right? That you're just trying to grow strong with. Because again, otherwise, going back to it, then what are you going to do with your life? Like then you won't achieve your goals.
Yeah,
So,
it's true.
and I guess then talking about handling like failure and criticism is probably along the same lines, right?
Definitely, yeah. I don't take it personally. Now I've reached out to over 500 different companies, pitching my ideas to them over 9 years, and I've heard it all. Mean comments, really rude comments, absurd comments, contradicting comments, which are just crazy.
Mm.
They always throw me for a loop. But they're just
Whoa,
people.
you too, huh?
They do, and honestly, like they're at the end of the day, they're just comments to me. And I like to ask again to develop the relationship for further clarification. I like to repeat back what they said so I can get a better understanding of, is there anything I can improve on?
Don't do that. They'll get mad. Be like, I didn't say that. Yeah, you did. Right here, you sure did.
Honestly, when that happens, they will often change the way that they say the next thing. And because of that, usually they will again provide more clarification and kind of go back on what they said and change it,
Mm-hmm.
which then ends up making more sense. Because
I was gonna say they probably end up saying the thing that they should have said in the beginning,
exactly,
but for whatever reason did not. And that's just like any response at all.
totally.
It's like just they like said one thing to not say the real thing. It's like just say the real thing.
And unfortunately, that happens. It's crazy. And unfortunately, when we are inventors who are trying to get into companies and they don't have an inventor relations department, and this is
Mm.
1% of their job, and they get a random email from an inventor and they want to be cordial and they've never worked with inventors before and they're willing to see your sell sheet and give it a shot. Sometimes they don't know why they don't want to move forward with the product, but in their head they know that they don't want to move forward. And because they are really
Mm.
quick to like, well, I gotta respond. Like I already said no in my head, but here's a fourth follow up from the inventor, and I didn't say why I'm not interested. They throw something to kind of close the book. Unfortunately, what they often don't know is that this is relationship building, and anytime they try to close it, we want to gently open it because we want to develop the relationship with them.
Don't say no to me. Love me. Love
We
me.
can
Love my
close
ideas.
you can close the product and then continue that relationship with future products. And then they start to get it at that point. Usually they're like, oh, I see what's happening here. This is a long term relationship. I'm going to stop closing the book because this is something that could really benefit our company for years and years to come. Let me come back and actually give you a better answer than I did before. And that really does help us. And it develops that relationship. But I will also say on the flip side, sometimes that they give advice that may or may not be true to the industry, which is why I recommend to not take all of the advice that you are given from companies. In fact, I personally don't recommend you take advice from companies unless you hear it at least 5 times from 5 different companies saying the same thing.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple times where I feel like someone said something and I went back to you and be like, well, they said this. And you're like, I don't buy it. You need to hear that a lot more for me to buy that. I was like, all right, I feel you.
And honestly, in my mind, because time is the most important asset, it is far worse to spend a lot more time on something like redoing the physical prototype or the virtual prototype or the sell sheet or adding something more into your PPA, that if you spend a lot more time on it based on just one single opinion, you're taking that opinion and they're not even interested in the product. They're telling you why they're not looking to move forward with it. And so yes, if you change that one thing, you can come back to them, absolutely. And we do recommend that. We ask that. If I change this, would you like me to come back? And they might say yes, or they might say no, here's the actual reason why we're not interested, which is good for us to know. But you got to be cagey with your time, whether you're an inventor, a product developer, you as a person, you've only got so much time, and it's important to make sure that you're spending it wisely and efficiently when you're doing pitching, product licensing, anything for that matter.
I really love that. Well, and I always just enjoy hearing you talk about this because obviously you're just like a wealth of knowledge. And as we said earlier, I feel like we could just talk and talk and talk. But we've been going for like 2 hours now, which is great, and I hope people got a lot out of that. But as we're tying this up, what do you hope is the main takeaway for your listeners, particularly for this talk that we've had today?
That what is stopping most people isn't lack of knowledge, and to stop putting so much emphasis on trying to find the shortcuts or golden way to succeed, to start looking internally and to develop systems that work for you and not against you. Once you do that, finding the knowledge is the easy part. It is the start that stops most people. And that is really, really important to keep in mind because, yes, getting those soft skills, as we've talked about for so much time here, is so, so important, far more important than the knowledge. And it is much harder to do, to gain those soft skills. You can gain that knowledge, but to focus on the soft skills so that's not the thing that actually stops you is important. But if you don't start, then none of this matters.
So just get started, and the rest will take care of itself. My dad always says that when you drive, just drive the front of the car, the back will take care of itself. And that kind of, for whatever reason, that's just like reminding me here. It's like, just drive. Just drive. Just get in the car, turn it on, go forward. And, you can build these systems, you can create these habits as you go along, but just start. It can be messy, and that's okay.
Yep.
Just do it, and you might impress yourself with the outcome that you have. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self if you could?
I would say to ignore anyone who says that something cannot be done. It's easy to take everyone's advice, for that matter, to put all the spices, if you will, into the pot or the pan. But it won't end well if you do. In fact, it can even make you sick if you do that. Stick to what you believe in and execute that with consistency. You can do anything, and you can do hard things. You just need to convince yourself that it's worth your time to fight for.
Well, thank you so much. I love talking to you all the time, and I really hope that, the listeners got some good tidbits and pieces of advice, and hopefully the motivation to want to just continue with their dreams no matter how hard it is or what they're experiencing, or the mean thing that the bad man said.
Thank you, Emily. I so appreciate that. It was great to have this conversation with you. Thank you again. I really enjoyed my time here, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Contact you, find you, consume more of your stuff if they want to get more tidbits and advice on how to license their products, create games, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn, and feel free to connect with me there. Feel free to send me a message. I would love to communicate back and forth with you via LinkedIn. I also have a website called serialinventing.com. You can feel free to check out those resources there for my podcast, my comic, resources for inventors. And then if you are seriously considering product licensing and would like a coach to help you through it, then you can always contact InventRight and you can get a coach there.
Awesome. Thank you. Love you. Talk soon. Bye, everybody.